The arrogant millionaire CEO mocked his assistant's outfit until he saw her at the beach and froze. Hello, let's hear another incredible story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I love narrating stories for you, so get ready. Let's start. The 42nd floor of Ashworth Technologies gleamed with polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Seattle's skyline. But for Zara Belmont, the breathtaking view had long lost its charm. What once symbolized opportunity now felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in a world where her brilliance was overshadowed by her boss's relentless criticism. Zara adjusted her navy blazer for the third time that morning, her fingers trembling slightly as she prepared the quarterly reports. At 28, she had climbed her way from a modest apartment in Tacoma to the executive floor of one of Seattle's most prestigious tech companies. Her MBA from University of Washington hung proudly in her small cubicle, a reminder of the dreams that brought her here. "Belmont!" Kieran Ashworth's voice cut through the morning quiet like a blade. The CEO's corner office door stood open, revealing glimpses of Italian leather furniture and abstract art worth more than Zara's annual salary. She gathered the reports, her heels clicking against the marble as she approached his domain. Kieran stood with his back to her, 32 years of privilege evident in his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit and the way he commanded space without effort. His dark hair was impeccably styled, and even from behind, she could feel the arrogance radiating from his 6-foot frame. "Sir," Zara's voice remained steady, professional, a skill she'd mastered after 18 months of working under his scrutiny. Kieran turned, his steel-grey eyes immediately scanning her appearance with the precision of a laser. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, and his expression held that familiar mixture of disdain and superiority that made her stomach clench. "Is that what you're wearing to the Morrison Industries meeting?" His tone dripped with disapproval as his gaze lingered on her conservative outfit, a crisp white blouse, navy blazer, and pencil skirt that fell just below her knees. Zara's dark skin flushed with heat, but she kept her chin high. "Yes, sir. I believe it's appropriate for a business meeting." Kieran's laugh was sharp and cold. Appropriate. He circled his desk like a predator, each step calculated to intimidate. "Zara, we're trying to secure a $50 million contract, not attend a church social. Morrison Industries expects sophistication, glamour, not whatever this is." He gestured dismissively at her outfit, and Zara felt something crack inside her chest. She'd chosen this ensemble carefully, spending her lunch break yesterday ensuring every detail was perfect. The blazer was new, purchased with money she'd been saving for her student loans. "Our female executives need to represent the company's innovative spirit," Kieran continued, settling behind his mahogany desk like a king on his throne. "Perhaps you should observe how the women in our marketing department dress. They understand the importance of making an impression." The words hit their mark with surgical precision. Zara had seen those women, models masquerading as executives, hired more for their ability to fill out designer dresses than their business acumen. The implication was clear. She didn't belong in their world of champagne lunches and networking galas. "I understand your concern, Mr. Ashworth," Zara replied, her voice steady, despite the fire building in her chest. "However, I believe my professional qualifications and preparation for this meeting are what truly matter." Kieran's eyebrows rose, a dangerous glint entering his eyes. "Professional qualifications." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "You're an assistant, Belmont, a very replaceable assistant. Your job is to make me look good, which includes not embarrassing me with your limited understanding of corporate expectations." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Zara's hands clenched at her sides, her carefully manicured nails digging into her palms. She thought of her grandmother's voice, always reminding her to kill them with kindness and succeed despite their smallness. "I'll review the dress code policy again, sir," she said finally, each word measured and professional. "See that you do." Kieran dismissed her with a wave of his hand, already turning his attention to his computer screen. And Belmont? Next time, maybe consider that representing Ashworth Technologies requires more than just adequate. Zara turned and walked toward the door, her spine straight and head high. But as she reached the threshold, Kieran's voice stopped her cold. Oh, and wear something that doesn't make you look like you're hiding from the world. We need confidence, not camouflage. The elevator ride to her floor felt endless. Zara's reflection stared back at her from the polished steel doors. A beautiful black woman with intelligent brown eyes and natural hair styled in a professional updo. She saw competence, dignity and strength, but Kieran Ashworth saw only inadequacy, something to be molded or discarded. Back at her desk, Zara buried herself in work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she finalized the Morrison Industries presentation. Each slide was perfect, each data point triple-checked. She would prove her worth through excellence, even if he couldn't see past his own prejudices. As the Seattle rain began to patter against the windows, Zara made a silent promise to herself. She would endure Kieran Ashworth's condescension and casual cruelty. She would rise above his attempts to diminish her, and someday, somehow, she would show him exactly who Zara Belmont really was. She just had no idea that moment would come sooner than she thought. On a beach in Malibu, where all his carefully constructed assumptions would crumble like sandcastles in the tide. 3 days after the Morrison Industries meeting, which had been a resounding success thanks to Zara's meticulous preparation, she found herself standing in Kieran's office once again. This time, however, the atmosphere crackled with a different kind of tension. "Explain this to me." Kieran's voice was dangerously quiet as he slid a newspaper across his desk. The Seattle Business Journal's headline read, "Ashworth Technologies secures record-breaking contract." Zara glanced at the article, confusion flickering across her features. "Sir, I'm not sure what you're asking me to explain. The Morrison deal was exactly what we projected." "The quote," Kieran interrupted, his steel-grey eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Oh, the quote attributed to you." Her heart sank as she read the small text box, highlighted in yellow. "The success of this partnership reflects Ashworth Technologies' commitment to innovation and client satisfaction," said Zara Belmont, Senior Executive Assistant. "Our team's collaborative approach made this victory possible." "I never spoke to any reporter," Zara said quickly, her mind racing. "Someone from Morrison's team must have mentioned our conversation during the negotiation. You were only what?" Kieran stood slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across his desk. "Taking credit for my work, positioning yourself as the face of this company." The accusation hit her like a physical blow. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she set the newspaper down. "Mr. Ashworth, that's not what happened. During the presentation, Mr. Morrison asked about our team dynamics. I simply explained how collaborative our approach was, emphasizing your leadership." "My leadership." Kieran's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Yet somehow your name is the one in print, isn't it, Belmont?" Heat flooded Zara's cheeks as the injustice of the situation crashed over her. She had worked 16-hour days preparing for that meeting, had anticipated every possible question, had even coached Kieran on Morrison's personal preferences, and now she was being accused of seeking glory she had never wanted. "I can call the Journal and request a correction," she offered, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her chest. "Oh, how generous of you," Kieran sneered, moving around his desk with predatory grace. "Tell me, Zara, what exactly makes you think you're qualified to speak for this company? Your degree from a state school, your adequate performance reviews." Each word was calculated to wound, and they found their mark with devastating precision. Zara's jaw clenched as she fought to maintain her composure. "My qualifications speak for themselves, Mr. Ashworth. The Morrison contract succeeded because of thorough preparation and attention to detail, qualities that I take pride in bringing to this position." "Pride?" Kieran's eyebrows rose mockingly. "How refreshing. Most people in your position understand the importance of humility." The words hung in the air like poison. Zara felt something shift inside her, a tectonic plate of patience that had been building pressure for 18 months, finally beginning to crack. "Gu, what exactly do you mean by people in my position?" she asked quietly, her brown eyes meeting his grey ones with unwavering intensity. For a moment, something flickered across Kieran's face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition that he had pushed too far. But his arrogance quickly reasserted itself. "I mean assistants who seem to forget their place in the corporate hierarchy," he said smoothly, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "My place?" Zara repeated the words slowly, as if tasting them. "And where exactly is my place, Mr. Ashworth?" The question hung between them, charged with 18 months of accumulated humiliation, brilliant work dismissed, and potential deliberately overlooked. Kieran's jaw tightened as he realized he had walked into territory where his usual tactics might not work. "Your place is supporting the executives of this company, not seeking personal recognition," he said finally. "I see." Zara's voice was soft, but it carried an edge that made Kieran's eyes narrow. "And if I were to seek another position, perhaps at Morrison Industries, where they seemed quite impressed with my adequate contributions?" The color drained from Kieran's face. Morrison Industries had specifically requested Zara's contact information, praising her insight and professionalism. Losing her to a major client would be more than embarrassing. It would be professionally devastating. "Are you threatening me, Belmont?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm simply exploring my options, Mr. Ashworth. After all, you've made it quite clear that my contributions here are limited." For the first time since she'd known him, Kieran Ashworth looked genuinely unsettled. He studied her face, perhaps seeing for the first time the steel beneath her professional exterior. "This conversation is over," he said abruptly, turning back to his computer. "You have work to do." Zara nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I do." As she walked toward the door, her phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, she glanced at it. An invitation from her college roommate Nalani to join her in Malibu for the weekend. "Girl, you need a break. Come to the beach house. Sun, sand, and sanity restoration guaranteed." For the first time in days, Zara smiled. Perhaps it was time to remind herself who she was, outside these marble walls and glass offices. Perhaps it was time to remember that Zara Belmont was more than Kieran Ashworth's perception of her. "Actually, Mr. Ashworth," she called from the doorway. He looked up, irritation clear in his expression. "I'll be taking a personal day on Friday. I trust that won't interfere with your weekend plans." Before he could respond, she was gone, leaving Kieran staring at the empty doorway with a mixture of confusion and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like respect. That evening, as Zara packed her weekend bag, she made a decision. This weekend wouldn't just be about rest and relaxation. It would be about rediscovering the woman she had been before Kieran Ashworth tried to reduce her to his narrow expectations. She had no idea that fate was about to give her the perfect opportunity to do exactly that. The Malibu sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber as Kieran Ashworth walked along the secluded stretch of beach behind his college friend's mansion. For the first time in months, his Tom Ford suit had been replaced by simple khaki shorts and a white linen shirt, unbuttoned and billowing in the ocean breeze. Even on vacation, however, his mind churned with the events of the past week. Zara Belmont's unexpected defiance had rattled him more than he cared to admit. The way she had looked at him, challenged him, questioned his authority. It was unlike anything he'd experienced from an employee. Most people cowered under his criticism, but she had stood there with quiet dignity, her brown eyes blazing with intelligence, and something else he couldn't quite identify. The pristine sand was warm beneath his bare feet as he approached the water's edge, seeking the peace that had eluded him in Seattle. His friend's private beach stretched for miles, a sanctuary where titans of industry came to escape the pressures of their empires. Here, with only the rhythmic crash of waves for company, Kieran hoped to find clarity, A splash in the distance caught his attention. Someone was swimming far out in the deeper water, their strokes confident and powerful. Kieran paused, shading his eyes against the brilliant afternoon sun. The swimmer was heading toward shore with graceful precision, cutting through the crystalline water like a mermaid returning from the depths. As the figure drew closer, Kieran found himself transfixed. The swimmer was a woman, and even from a distance, her movement spoke of strength and natural grace. Her strokes were economical, yet elegant, each one propelling her forward with hypnotic rhythm. The woman reached the shallower water and stood, sending cascades of droplets sparkling in the sunlight. Kieran's breath caught in his throat. She was magnificent, curves that spoke of feminine power rather than fragility, dark skin glistening like polished bronze, natural hair slicked back and revealing the perfect architecture of her face. She began walking toward the shore, water streaming from her body, and Kieran felt something primal stir within him. This was what goddesses must have looked like, emerging from ancient seas, confident, sensual, utterly commanding. Her bikini, a deep emerald that complemented her skin tone perfectly, revealed a body that was both athletic and voluptuous. The woman moved with unconscious sensuality, her hips swaying slightly as she navigated the shifting sand beneath the receding waves. There was something about her bearing, the way she carried herself, that spoke of inner strength and self-possession. This was not a woman who apologized for taking up space in the world. As she drew closer, 20 yards away now, Kieran found himself frozen in place. His heart hammered against his ribs as recognition began to dawn like a slow sunrise. The bone structure, the elegant neck, the way she held her head. The woman turned toward him, water droplets catching the light like diamonds on her skin, and Kieran's world tilted on its axis. Zara. The name escaped his lips in a whisper of disbelief. Zara Belmont froze mid-step, her eyes widening as she registered the familiar figure standing 30 feet away. The confident goddess who had emerged from the sea, transformed in an instant into the professional woman he knew, though her body remained the same stunning revelation. For a moment that stretched into eternity, they simply stared at each other. Kieran's mind struggled to reconcile the conservative assistant he had dismissed and diminished with this breathtaking vision before him. Every assumption he had made, every casual cruelty about her appearance, every suggestion that she lacked the sophistication to represent his company, all of it crumbled like sandcastles before the incoming tide. Mr. Ashworth. Zara's voice carried across the space between them, carefully neutral despite the obvious shock in her expression. She made no move to cover herself, no gesture of embarrassment or apology. Instead, she stood there like a queen surveying her domain, water still dripping from her curves, chin lifted with quiet pride. Kieran's mouth had gone completely dry. He had spent months criticizing her conservative appearance, suggesting she lacked the glamour necessary for his corporate world. But here, freed from the constraints of business attire and office politics, Zara Belmont was the most captivating woman he had ever seen. I didn't expect, he stammered, his legendary composure deserting him entirely. No, Zara said softly, beginning to move again toward the shore. Each step revealed more of her incredible form, the curve of her waist, the strength in her shoulders, the natural confidence that he had somehow failed to see beneath her professional facade. I don't imagine you did. She reached the dry sand and bent gracefully to retrieve a colorful sarong from where it lay folded beside a beach bag. The movement was fluid and natural, without the self-consciousness that most women might have felt under such intense scrutiny. As she wrapped the fabric around her waist, she never broke eye contact with Kieran. "Are you staying nearby?" she asked conversationally, as if they were meeting at a coffee shop rather than having their entire professional relationship redefined by her emergence from the Pacific Ocean. Kieran nodded wordlessly, still struggling to form coherent thoughts. The woman before him bore no resemblance to the adequate assistant he had so carelessly diminished. This Zara radiated confidence, sensuality, and a kind of natural elegance that couldn't be taught or bought. "Well," Zara said, shouldering her beach bag with casual grace, "I suppose I'll see you Monday morning." She began walking away, her bare feet silent on the sand, the sarong swaying with each step. It took every ounce of Kieran's willpower not to chase after her, not to demand an explanation for the deception he felt had been played on him, though some rational part of his mind recognized that the only deception had been his own willful blindness. As Zara disappeared around a bend in the beach, Kieran sank onto the sand, his legs no longer capable of supporting him. His hands shook as he ran them through his hair, trying to process what had just occurred. For the first time in his adult life, Kieran Ashworth had been rendered speechless by a woman, and that woman was his assistant, the same person he had spent 18 months trying to make invisible. Monday morning arrived with Seattle's characteristic drizzle, but Kieran Ashworth barely noticed the weather as he stood at his office window, his coffee growing cold in his hands. He had returned from Malibu 36 hours ago, yet the image of Zara emerging from the ocean played on an endless loop in his mind. He had slept perhaps 4 hours total since Saturday afternoon. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Water cascading down her bronze skin, the confident tilt of her chin, the way she had looked at him with those intelligent brown eyes as if she were the one in control, which, he was beginning to realize, she had been. The elevator chimed at exactly 8:30 a.m., and Kieran's pulse quickened despite himself. Through his office's glass walls, he watched Zara emerge, looking every inch the consummate professional in a charcoal-grey dress that hugged her curves subtly but unmistakably. Her natural hair was styled in a sleek, low bun, and she moved with the same fluid grace he had witnessed on the beach. But now he knew what lay beneath that professional facade. Now he had seen the goddess hiding behind the conservative clothing, and the knowledge was driving him slowly insane. "Good morning, Mr. Ashworth." Zara's voice came through his intercom, perfectly measured and professional. "Your 9 a.m. with the Vancouver team has been moved to 9:15. They're running slightly behind due to flight delays." Kieran stared at the intercom, his mouth suddenly dry. That voice, the same voice that had said his name on the beach with such composed dignity, now carried on as if nothing earth-shattering had occurred between them. "Belmont," he said, his voice rougher than intended, "could you come in here, please?" A pause. Then, "Of course, sir." She entered his office with her usual professional demeanor, tablet in hand, but Kieran's newly awakened awareness caught details he had somehow missed before. The way her dress emphasized her hourglass figure, how her heels accentuated the lean lines of her legs, the subtle sway of her hips as she approached his desk. "Is there something specific you need regarding the Vancouver meeting?" Zara asked, settling into the chair across from his desk with practiced grace. Kieran found himself studying her face, searching for some acknowledgement of what had passed between them on that Malibu beach. Her brown eyes met his steadily, but they revealed nothing beyond professional courtesy. "The weekend," he began, then stopped, unsure how to proceed. In his entire adult life, Kieran had never been at a loss for words with an employee. "Yes?" Zara's eyebrows rose slightly, the picture of polite inquiry. "Did you enjoy your time in Malibu?" The question sounded inane, even to his own ears. Something flickered in Zara's expression, amusement, perhaps, or recognition of his discomfort. "Very much, thank you. It was exactly what I needed." The simple statement carried layers of meaning that made Kieran's chest tighten. She had needed to get away from him, from his constant criticism, from the toxic environment he had created, and in doing so, she had revealed a version of herself that haunted his every waking moment. "I see," he said, his fingers drumming against his desk. "Well, I trust you're refreshed and ready for the week ahead." "Absolutely." Zara's smile was serene, giving nothing away. Was there anything else regarding the meeting? Before Kieran could respond, his phone rang. "Ashworth Technologies. This is Kieran." "Mr. Ashworth, this is David Morrison from Morrison Industries." The voice on the other end was warm with enthusiasm. I wanted to personally thank you again for Friday's presentation. Your assistant, Ms. Belmont, was particularly impressive. Her insights into our operational challenges were remarkable. Kieran's eyes fixed on Zara, who maintained her professional composure despite clearly hearing Morrison's praise through the phone's speaker. I'd like to discuss the possibility of having Ms. Belmont consult on our implementation phase, Morrison continued. Her strategic thinking could be invaluable to our team. I will certainly consider that, Kieran managed, his mind reeling. Morrison Industries wanted to poach his assistant, the same assistant he had spent months diminishing and undervaluing. After ending the call, silence stretched between them. Zara sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, waiting for his response to Morrison's request. They want you, Kieran said finally, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. So it would seem, Zara replied calmly. Morrison Industries is a well-respected company. The opportunity would certainly be interesting. The subtle threat was clear, and it sent a jolt of something dangerously close to panic through Kieran's chest. The thought of losing her, especially now, when he was just beginning to see who she really was, made his stomach clench with unfamiliar anxiety. Your contract with Ashworth Technologies has 6 months remaining, he said, grasping for control. Contracts can be negotiated, Zara replied smoothly, especially when both parties find the current arrangement less than optimal. Her words hit their mark with surgical precision. For months, he had made her feel inadequate, replaceable, invisible. Now she was showing him exactly how wrong he had been, and the power dynamic between them had shifted so completely that he felt dizzy from it. What would it take, Kieran asked quietly, to keep you here? Zara tilted her head, considering him with those penetrating brown eyes. Respect, she said simply. Recognition of my actual contributions, rather than criticism of my appearance. And perhaps an acknowledgement that my value to this company extends beyond my ability to fetch coffee and schedule meetings. Each word was delivered with quiet dignity, but they struck Kieran like physical blows. He had been so blind, so arrogant, so determined to maintain his superiority that he had nearly lost the most capable person on his staff. The Vancouver meeting, he said abruptly. I want you to lead it. Surprise flickered across Zara's features for the first time. Sir, you heard Morrison. Your strategic insights are remarkable, so prove it. Lead the Vancouver presentation. For a moment, something electric passed between them. Recognition, challenge, possibility. Then Zara's professional mask slipped back into place. I'll prepare immediately, she said, rising from her chair with fluid grace. As she walked toward the door, Kieran called after her, Zara. She turned, and for just an instant, he saw not his assistant but the goddess from the beach, confident, powerful, magnificent. Don't make me regret this opportunity, he said softly. Her smile was small but devastatingly effective. I wouldn't dream of it, Mr. Ashworth. As the door closed behind her, Kieran slumped in his chair, running shaking hands through his hair. He was playing with fire, and he knew it. But the alternative, losing her entirely, was no longer an option he could bear to consider. The Vancouver presentation was scheduled for Thursday afternoon, giving Zara 3 days to prepare what could either be the pinnacle of her career or its spectacular end. She knew Kieran's offer wasn't born from sudden recognition of her abilities. It was a desperate attempt to maintain control after seeing her true self on that Malibu beach. But Zara Belmont had never been one to waste an opportunity, regardless of its motivation. By Wednesday morning, she had transformed the modest conference room into a strategic command center. Charts lined the walls, financial projections covered every surface, and her laptop displayed a presentation that would either silence her critics forever or provide them with ammunition for her dismissal. Kieran found her there at 6 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled papers, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled from an all-night work session. Her blazer hung on the back of her chair, leaving her in a silk blouse that hugged her curves in ways that made his mouth go dry. "You're here early," he observed, his voice carefully neutral despite the way his pulse quickened at the sight of her. Zara looked up from her laptop, and Kieran was struck by the fierce intelligence blazing in her brown eyes. This was the woman he had glimpsed on the beach, confident, powerful, utterly in command of her domain. "Excellence requires preparation," she replied simply, turning back to her screen. Kieran moved closer, ostensibly to review her work, but really because he found himself drawn to her presence like a moth to flame. The subtle scent of her perfume, something warm and exotic that he had never noticed before, made his head spin. "Walk me through it," he said, settling into the chair beside her. For the next hour, Zara presented her strategy with surgical precision. She had identified weaknesses in Vancouver Industries' current structure that even their own executives had missed. Her proposed solutions were innovative, cost-effective, and brilliant in their simplicity. Kieran found himself leaning closer as she spoke, mesmerized not just by her intellect, but by the passionate way she explained each concept. Her hands moved gracefully as she gestured, her voice carried conviction that made him believe anything was possible, and her eyes lit up with genuine excitement about the business possibilities. This was the woman he had dismissed as adequate for 18 months. The recognition of his own blindness was like a physical ache in his chest. "This is," he began, then stopped, struggling to find words adequate to his amazement. "Surprising." Zara's tone was deceptively mild, but her eyes held a challenge that made his breath catch. "Extraordinary," he said honestly, and watched something shift in her expression. For a moment, the professional mask slipped, and he saw vulnerability beneath her confidence. The part of her that had absorbed his criticism, questioned her own worth, wondered if she truly belonged in his corporate world. "I've always been extraordinary, Mr. Ashworth," she said quietly. "You simply chose not to see it." The words hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Kieran felt the weight of every dismissive comment, every casual cruelty, every missed opportunity to recognize her brilliance. "Zara, Ms. Ashworth." The intercom crackled to life, interrupting whatever confession might have emerged. "There's a Miss Cross here to see you. She says it's urgent." Kieran's face went pale. "Send her up." Zara noticed his reaction immediately. "Should I?" "No," Kieran said quickly, then caught himself. "And I mean, if you have work to do." But it was too late. The conference room door opened, and Evangeline Cross swept in like a force of nature. At 29, she was everything society magazines deemed perfect. Platinum blonde hair styled in effortless waves, legs that went on forever beneath a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and the kind of cultivated beauty that money could buy and maintain. "Darling," Evangeline purred, gliding toward Kieran with practiced grace. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Her pale blue eyes swept the room, taking inventory of the charts and projections before landing on Zara with unconcealed assessment. The look was brief but comprehensive, the kind of visual dismissal that wealthy women had perfected over generations. "Evangeline," Kieran said carefully, rising from his chair. "And what brings you to Seattle?" "Business, naturally. Daddy's thinking of expanding Cross Enterprises into tech, and I thought of you immediately." Her smile was radiant and calculated in equal measure. "Plus, I've missed you terribly since we took our break." Zara watched this exchange with the detached interest of an anthropologist observing exotic species. She had heard about Evangeline Cross, Kieran's former fiancée, heiress to a fashion empire, the kind of woman who graced charity galas and society pages with equal ease. "I should let you two catch up," Zara said smoothly, beginning to gather her materials. "Oh, don't leave on my account," Evangeline said with false warmth. "I'm Evangeline Cross." "And you are?" "Zara Belmont. I work here." Something flickered in Evangeline's eyes, surprise, perhaps, that someone who worked here could carry herself with such quiet dignity. "How lovely," Evangeline said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Kieran always did appreciate dedicated employees. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Zara felt the familiar sting of being dismissed based on assumptions about her position and worth. But this time, instead of internalizing the slight, she found herself straightening with newfound resolve. "Mr. Ashworth," Zara said, her voice carrying a note of professional authority that made both Kieran and Evangeline look at her with surprise. "The Vancouver presentation is ready. I trust you'll want to review the final details before tomorrow's meeting." "Yes," Kieran said, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "Absolutely. I'll be in my office when you're ready," Zara replied, gathering her materials with unhurried grace. As she walked toward the door, she could feel Evangeline's assessing gaze following her. Let her look, Zara thought. Let her see exactly what she was dealing with. "The presentation?" Evangeline asked once Zara had left, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "Zara is leading our Vancouver Industries proposal," Kieran said, and Zara smiled to herself as she heard the pride in his voice, pride that had been entirely absent just weeks ago. "Your secretary is giving presentations." Evangeline's laugh was like tinkling glass. "How progressive of you." "She's not my secretary," Kieran said sharply. "She's my senior executive assistant and one of the most capable professionals I've ever worked with." Zara paused just outside the conference room, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. He was defending her. Kieran Ashworth, the man who had spent months diminishing her contributions, was defending her to his ex-fiancé. As she walked back to her desk, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The game had new players now, and the stakes had just gotten infinitely higher. But for the first time since she'd started working at Ashworth Technologies, Zara Belmont felt ready to play to win. The Vancouver Industries boardroom fell silent as Zara concluded her presentation. For 30 minutes, she had commanded the attention of 12 executives with the poise of a seasoned CEO, her voice never wavering, her data irrefutable, her solutions elegant in their innovation. Kieran sat at the far end of the polished mahogany table, watching in amazement as the woman he had so carelessly underestimated transformed his company's future with nothing but intellect, preparation, and quiet confidence. Every slide had been perfect, every answer to their probing questions delivered with surgical precision. "Ms. Belmont," said Patricia Novak, Vancouver Industries CEO, her silver hair gleaming under the conference room lights. "In 25 years of business, I've rarely seen such a comprehensive understanding of our operational challenges, combined with such innovative solutions." Zara inclined her head gracefully. "Thank you, Ms. Novak. I believe the partnership between our companies could be truly transformative." "Indeed." Novak's sharp blue eyes swept the room, taking in the impressed faces of her board members. Gentlemen, ladies, I think we have our answer." The contract signing took another hour, but the outcome had been decided the moment Zara finished speaking. $75 million, the largest deal in Ashworth Technologies' history, signed and sealed because of one woman's brilliance. As the Vancouver executives filed out, exchanging business cards and scheduling follow-up meetings, Novak approached Zara with a warm smile. "Ms. Belmont, I hope you know that our doors are always open to someone of your caliber. If you ever decide you're ready for a bigger stage—" "I appreciate that, Ms. Novak," Zara replied diplomatically. "For now, I'm exactly where I need to be." Her eyes found Kieran's across the room, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, respect, and something deeper that made his chest tighten with unfamiliar emotion. The flight back to Seattle was quiet, the small corporate jet humming through evening clouds painted gold and crimson by the setting sun. Kieran sat across from Zara, ostensibly reviewing contracts, but actually stealing glances at her profile as she worked on her laptop. "You know," he said finally, setting aside his papers, "I owe you an apology." Zara looked up, her brown eyes unreadable in the cabin's soft lighting. "And just one." The gentle mockery in her tone made him smile despite himself. "Several thousand, actually, but I'll start with the most important one." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, suddenly looking younger and more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. "I was wrong about you, completely, utterly wrong, and my blindness nearly cost this company its most valuable asset." "Nearly." Zara's eyebrows rose with subtle amusement. "Morrison Industries is still circling, aren't they?" Kieran asked, and she didn't deny it. "What would it take to make you stay, really stay, not just fulfill a contract?" Zara closed her laptop and studied his face for a long moment. In the intimate confines of the jet, with the barriers of office hierarchy temporarily dissolved, she saw not the arrogant CEO who had made her life miserable, but a man genuinely struggling with the recognition of his own failures. "The honesty," she said finally. "I want to know why you treated me the way you did, and I want the truth, not some corporate-approved explanation about maintaining professional standards." Kieran's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might retreat behind his usual armor of authority. Instead, he ran a hand through his dark hair and exhaled slowly. "Because you scared me," he admitted quietly. "Scared you?" Zara's voice carried genuine surprise. "From the moment you walked into my office 18 months ago, you threatened everything I thought I knew about control and competence." His grey eyes met hers, and she saw pain there, old wounds that had nothing to do with her. "You were brilliant, capable, and completely unimpressed by my wealth or position. So I tried to diminish you before you could diminish me." The confession hung between them, like a bridge across a chasm neither had been willing to acknowledge before. "My father built this company from nothing," Kieran continued, his voice barely audible over the jet's engines. "But he never let me forget that I was born into privilege I hadn't earned. Every success was questioned, every achievement attributed to nepotism rather than merit. When you came along, representing everything I feared I wasn't, genuinely competent, self-made, deserving of respect, I tried to tear you down, to protect my own insecurities." Zara felt something shift inside her chest. The man before her was nothing like the arrogant tyrant she had endured for so long. This was someone wounded, someone who had learned to wound others as a form of self-defense. "Kieran," she said softly, using his first name for the first time in their professional relationship, "you earned that success today. The contract, the respect of the Vancouver team, that was your leadership that made it possible. It was your brilliance that secured it," he corrected. "And if I hadn't been such an arrogant fool, we could have been achieving results like this for months." The jet began its descent into Seattle, the city lights spreading below them like fallen stars. In the growing intimacy of their conversation, Zara found herself seeing Kieran Ashworth not as her tormentor, but as a complex man struggling with his own demons. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Kieran's smile was tentative but genuine. "Now I hope you'll give me a chance to prove that I can be the leader and the man you deserve to work with." As the jet touched down on the tarmac, both of them knew that everything had changed. The professional relationship that had been built on power and resentment was dissolving, replaced by something more dangerous and infinitely more compelling. But neither of them noticed the black sedan waiting in the private terminal's parking area, or the platinum blonde figure watching their plane taxi to a stop. Evangeline Cross had been busy during their absence, and her plans for reclaiming Kieran Ashworth were just beginning. The game was far from over, and the stakes were about to get much higher. As they walked across the tarmac together, shoulders almost touching, Zara felt a flutter of something she hadn't expected: hope. Perhaps Kieran Ashworth was capable of change after all. She had no idea that someone was determined to ensure that change never took root. The weeks following the Vancouver triumph brought a transformation to Ashworth Technologies that no one could have predicted. Kieran had promoted Zara to senior strategic consultant, moved her to an office on the executive floor, and begun treating her as the intellectual equal she had always been. But with recognition came new dangers. Zara stood at her new floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Seattle's morning fog roll off Elliott Bay, when her assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Ms. Belmont, there's a delivery for you at reception." Minutes later, Zara stared at the most exquisite bouquet of white orchids she had ever seen. The card, written in Kieran's distinctive handwriting, simply read, "Thank you for making me see clearly." "K, beautiful flowers," came a honeyed voice behind her. Zara turned to find Evangeline Cross gliding into her office uninvited, resplendent in a cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her pale blue eyes assessed the orchids with the calculating precision of a jeweler examining diamonds. "Miss Cross," Zara said politely, setting the card aside. "What can I do for you?" "Oh, I was hoping we could have a little chat," Evangeline said, settling into one of Zara's chairs with practiced grace. "The woman to woman." Something in her tone made Zara's instincts prickle with warning. She remained standing, maintaining the subtle power advantage of height. "I have to say, I'm impressed," Evangeline continued, her voice warm with false admiration. "The way you've positioned yourself here, it's quite clever, really." "I'm not sure what you mean." Evangeline's laugh was like crystal chiming. "Oh, darling, please, we both know exactly what's happening here. The devoted assistant, working late nights, slowly earning the boss's trust, making herself indispensable. It's a tale as old as time." Heat flooded Zara's cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "My professional relationship with Mr. Ashworth is based on mutual respect and proven competence." "Of course it is," Evangeline agreed, though her tone suggested otherwise. "And I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with that spectacular body you were flaunting on the beach in Malibu." The words hit like a slap. Zara's eyes narrowed as she realized Evangeline somehow knew about the beach encounter. "Kieran told me about your little coincidental meeting," Evangeline continued, examining her perfectly manicured nails. "How you emerged from the ocean like some sort of fantasy. Men are such visual creatures, aren't they? Show them a pretty package, and they forget all about substance." "I think you should leave," Zara said quietly, her hands clenching at her sides. "In a moment, darling. You see, I need you to understand something." Evangeline rose from her chair, moving closer with predatory grace. "Kieran and I have history. Deep, complicated, passionate history. We've been engaged twice, broken up 4 times, and somehow always find our way back to each other." She paused beside Zara's desk, her fingers trailing across the surface with possessive familiarity. "He's fascinated by you right now, I'll give you that. But fascination fades, especially when reality sets in. When he remembers that he needs someone who can move in his world, who understands his social obligations, who can be the kind of wife his position requires." "Wife." Zara's voice carried genuine surprise. Evangeline's smile was triumphant. "Oh yes, darling. Kieran may be enjoying this little distraction, but when it comes time to settle down, to build a life that matters in our circles, he'll choose someone appropriate. Someone like me." The casual cruelty of her words was breathtaking in its precision, but instead of crumbling under the attack, Zara felt something steel-hard form in her chest. "You know what I find interesting, Mrs. Cross," Zara said, her voice carrying a new edge that made Evangeline's confident expression flicker. "For someone so certain of her place in Kieran's life, you seem awfully threatened by his professional relationship with me." "Threatened?" Evangeline's laugh was too bright, too forced. "Hardly. Then why are you here? Why take time from your surely busy social calendar to have this conversation with someone you consider so beneath your notice?" For the first time since entering the office, Evangeline looked genuinely unsettled. Her perfect composure cracked just enough to reveal the insecurity beneath. "I'm simply trying to save you from inevitable disappointment," she said, but the words lacked their earlier conviction. "How thoughtful," Zara replied dryly. "But I think I can manage my own expectations. Thank you." Before Evangeline could respond, Kieran's voice came through the open doorway. "Zara, did you get the—" He stopped abruptly, taking in the tense tableau before him. "Evangeline, I didn't realize you were here." "Darling!" Evangeline's mask of perfection snapped back into place instantly. "I was just getting acquainted with your brilliant consultant. We were having the most fascinating conversation about professional development." Kieran's eyes moved between the two women, clearly sensing undercurrents he couldn't quite identify. "I see. Well, Zara, when you have a moment, I'd like to discuss the Henderson proposal." "Of course," Zara said smoothly. "I'll be right there." Evangeline gathered her purse with theatrical precision. "Well, I should let you get back to work. It was lovely chatting, Zara. I do hope we can continue our conversation soon." As she glided past Kieran, she paused to place a proprietary hand on his arm. "Dinner tonight? There's so much I want to discuss with you." Kieran hesitated, his eyes finding Zara's across the room. Something passed between them. A question, perhaps, or a challenge. "I'm not sure I can tonight," he said finally. "I have a lot of work to catch up on." Evangeline's smile never wavered, but Zara caught the flash of fury in her pale eyes. "Of course, darling. Work first, always. I'll call you later." After she left, silence settled over the office like dust after an explosion. Kieran moved closer to Zara's desk, his expression concerned. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Zara murmured, then looked up at him with renewed determination. "The Henderson proposal. I actually have some ideas that might interest you." As they settled into discussing business, neither of them noticed the small recording device Evangeline had discreetly placed behind one of Zara's awards during their conversation. The game was escalating, and Evangeline Cross was playing to win at any cost. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated exactly how strong Zara Belmont could be when someone tried to make her feel small. The real battle was just beginning. The Seattle Business Journal's front page hit newsstands at 6 a.m. on a grey Thursday morning, and by 7 a.m., Kieran Ashworth's phone was buzzing with calls from reporters, board members, and investors. The headline was devastating in its simplicity. "Ashworth Technologies, CEO in Workplace Romance Scandal." Zara learned about the article when she arrived at the office to find a crowd of reporters gathered outside the building's entrance. Security was doing their best to maintain order, but cameras flashed like lightning as she made her way through the lobby. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. When the doors opened, she was greeted by the sight of her colleagues huddled around their phones and computers, their conversations stopping abruptly when they saw her. Her assistant, Carmen, rushed to meet her with wide, sympathetic eyes. "Ms. Belmont, Mr. Ashworth is asking to see you immediately. And there have been 17 calls from reporters in the last hour." Zara's office felt like a fishbowl as she gathered her composure. Through the glass walls, she could see people staring, whispering, speculating. The recording device Evangeline had planted had done its work perfectly. Kieran's office door was closed when she arrived, but his assistant waved her through immediately. She found him standing at his windows, his normally perfect appearance disheveled. His hair looked like he had been running his hands through it. His tie was loosened, and his usually immaculate shirt was wrinkled. "Have you seen it?" he asked without turning around. "The headlines, yes." Zara closed the door behind her and activated the privacy glass with a touch of a button. "How bad is it?" Kieran turned, and she was struck by the exhaustion and fury in his grey eyes. "They have audio, Zara. Conversations between us that were clearly recorded without our knowledge. Someone has been planning this for weeks." He moved to his desk and played a file on his computer. Zara's stomach clenched as she heard her own voice, crystal clear through expensive recording equipment. "My professional relationship with Mr. Ashworth is based on mutual respect and proven competence." Then Evangeline's voice, dripping with false sweetness. "Of course it is. And I'm sure it has absolutely nothing to do with that spectacular body you were flaunting on the beach in Malibu." The recording continued, capturing Zara's measured responses and Evangeline's calculated provocations. But taken out of context, edited and spliced together, the conversation painted a picture of inappropriate workplace dynamics and personal entanglements. "She played us," Kieran said, his voice raw with anger. She played us both perfectly. Zara sank into a chair, her mind racing through the implications. The board will demand an investigation. The Vancouver contract could be jeopardized. Morrison Industries has already called, Kieran interrupted grimly. They're reassessing their partnership in light of recent developments. The words hit her like physical blows. Everything they had built together, every achievement she had earned through brilliance and hard work, was crumbling because of Evangeline's manipulation. I should resign, Zara said quietly. Effective immediately. It might contain the damage. No. Kieran's voice was sharp with authority. Absolutely not. You will not sacrifice your career because of her vindictive games. Kieran, be realistic. The optics are terrible. A powerful CEO and his assistant. You are not my assistant anymore, he said fiercely, moving around his desk to face her. You are a senior consultant who earned her position through exceptional ability. And I will not let anyone, including the board of directors, forget that fact. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. In his eyes, she saw not just anger, but something deeper, a protective fury that took her breath away. The board meeting is in 2 hours, he continued. They're calling for both of our heads, but I have a plan. Before Zara could ask what he meant, the office door burst open. Evangeline Cross swept in like a storm front, her designer coat still damp from the Seattle drizzle, her expression a masterpiece of false concern. Kieran, darling, I came as soon as I heard, she said, her voice pitched perfectly for maximum impact. This is terrible for you, for the company. Get out. Kieran's voice was deadly quiet. I know you're upset, but I said get out, Evangeline. Now, for the first time since Zara had known her, Evangeline's mask slipped completely. Her pale blue eyes blazed with triumph and malice as she looked between Kieran and Zara. Oh, I see, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You're choosing her. Actually choosing your little assistant over everything we had, everything we could have again. We never had anything real, Kieran replied, his voice steady despite the fury radiating from his frame. On just mutual convenience and your father's business connections. Evangeline's laugh was sharp and bitter. And what does she offer you? A few months of novelty before reality sets in. She's not one of us, Kieran. She'll never understand your world, never fit into your life the way it actually is. You're right, Kieran said, and Zara felt her heart crack. But then he continued, she's better than my world. She's better than all of us. He moved to stand beside Zara's chair, his presence solid and protective. Zara Belmont has more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire perfectly manicured body. She earned everything she has through brilliance and hard work, not daddy's money and social connections. Evangeline's face went white with rage. You'll regret this, Kieran. Both of you will regret this. The only thing I regret, Kieran said quietly, is that it took me so long to see who you really are. After Evangeline stormed out, silence settled over the office like dust after an explosion. Zara sat motionless, processing everything that had just happened. You defended me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course I did. Kieran knelt beside her chair, his grey eyes intense with emotion she had never seen before. Zara, what I said in there, I meant every word. You are extraordinary, you are brilliant, and if the board can't see that, then they don't deserve to have you. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the arrogant CEO who had made her life miserable, but a man who was willing to risk everything to protect her reputation and dignity. What happens now? She asked. Kieran's smile was grim but determined. Now we fight together. As if summoned by his words, his phone rang. The board meeting had been moved up. In 30 minutes, they would face the tribunal that would decide both their professional fates. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Zara felt a spark of hope. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. And Kieran Ashworth, she was beginning to realize, was a formidable ally when he chose to be. The Ashworth Technologies boardroom had never felt more like a courtroom. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces ranging from disappointed to outright hostile. At the head sat Chairman Harrison Whitmore, Kieran's mentor and the man who had helped his father build the company from the ground up. Kieran entered first, his appearance impeccable despite the morning's chaos, every inch the confident CEO he had trained himself to be. Zara followed, her chin high and shoulders straight, wearing a navy blue suit that spoke of professional competence and unshakable dignity. "This is highly irregular," muttered board member Douglas Crane, his grey moustache bristling with indignation. "Having the subject of our investigation present during deliberations? Ms. Belmont is here at my request," Kieran said firmly, pulling out a chair for Zara before taking his own seat. "Any discussion of her professional conduct concerns me directly as her supervisor and advocate." "Advocate?" Whitmore's bushy eyebrows rose. "Kieran, I think you may be too personally invested to maintain proper perspective on this matter." "On the contrary," Kieran replied, opening his tablet with deliberate calm. "Not I believe I'm the only one here with complete perspective on Mrs. Belmont's contributions to this company." For the next 20 minutes, the board dissected every aspect of the scandal. They read excerpts from the newspaper article, played portions of the manipulated recording, and questioned both Kieran and Zara about their relationship with surgical precision. Board member Patricia Hernandez, one of only 3 women on the panel, leaned forward with sharp eyes. "Ms. Belmont, the recording suggests that your rapid promotion may have been influenced by factors other than professional merit. How do you respond to that allegation?" Zara's voice was steady as glass. "I respond by presenting the facts of my performance, Mrs. Hernandez. Since joining this company, I have successfully managed the integration of 3 major acquisitions, streamlined our operational protocols to save $2.3 million annually, and most recently secured the largest contract in company history." She paused, letting the numbers sink in before continuing. "And if the board believes those achievements were somehow influenced by personal relationships rather than competence, I invite you to review the work product itself and draw your own conclusions." Murmurs rippled around the table. Even the most skeptical board members couldn't argue with results like those. "Furthermore," Zara continued, her confidence growing with each word, "I want to address the nature of the recordings used against us. They were obtained without consent, edited to remove context, and strategically leaked to damage both Mr. Ashworth's reputation and this company's stock price. The question isn't whether Mr. Ashworth and I have developed mutual respect. It's who benefits from destroying that professional relationship." Kieran watched her with something approaching awe. This was the woman he had tried to diminish for 18 months, brilliant, articulate, and absolutely fearless when fighting for what she believed in. Chairman Whitmore stroked his silver beard thoughtfully. "You're suggesting corporate sabotage?" "I'm stating it as fact," Kieran interjected, rising from his chair. He moved to the room's presentation screen and activated it with his remote. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the real architect of this scandal." Evangeline Cross's photograph appeared on the screen, a professional headshot from Cross Enterprises' website. But Kieran's next slide showed security footage from the building's lobby, time-stamped 3 weeks earlier. Ms. Cross visited our offices multiple times over the past month, claiming to explore business partnerships. What she was actually doing was gathering intelligence and planting surveillance devices. He clicked again, revealing a technical analysis report. "Our security team found 3 recording devices in Mrs. Belmont's office, all bearing serial numbers traced to a private investigation firm employed by Cross Enterprises." The boardroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Douglas Crane's face had gone pale. "This is industrial espionage." "It gets worse," Kieran continued grimly. Cross Enterprises has been quietly acquiring shares in our competitors while simultaneously shorting our stock. Evangeline Cross stands to profit millions from the drop in our share price caused by this manufactured scandal. Board member James Morrison, no relation to Morrison Industries, leaned forward with dawning understanding. She's been playing a long game. Sabotage our reputation, tank our stock price, then swoop in with a hostile takeover bid. Exactly. Kieran's voice carried the cold fury of a man who had been systematically betrayed. She used our personal history as cover for a sophisticated corporate attack designed to destroy everything my father built. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach as the full scope of Evangeline's manipulation became clear. She hadn't just been collateral damage in a lover's revenge. She had been a strategic target in a corporate war. Chairman Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Finally, he looked up with steely determination. "What's our legal position?" "Strong," Kieran replied. "We have evidence of industrial espionage, market manipulation, and corporate fraud. Our attorneys are already preparing criminal charges, and our financial position, the Vancouver contract, remains solid. They've reviewed our evidence and confirmed their confidence in our partnership. Morrison Industries has also reversed their position after learning about the manipulation. Our stock price has already begun recovering as the truth emerges." Whitmore nodded slowly, then looked around the table at his fellow board members. "I'm all in favor of dropping this investigation and issuing a public statement supporting both Mr. Ashworth and Miss Belmont." 11 hands raised immediately. Only Douglas Crane abstained, his face red with embarrassment at having been so thoroughly deceived. "Motion carries," Whitmore announced. "Kieran, you have our full confidence. Ms. Belmont, on behalf of this board, I apologize for subjecting you to this ordeal. Your contributions to this company are valued and appreciated." As the board members filed out, shaking hands and offering quiet words of support, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months: complete vindication. Not just professional validation, but the recognition that she belonged exactly where she was. Kieran lingered as the room emptied, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. When they were finally alone, he moved closer, his expression intense with emotions he no longer tried to hide. "You were magnificent in there," he said softly. "Absolutely magnificent." "We both were," Zara replied. And for the first time in their professional relationship, she felt like they were truly equal partners. "Zara," Kieran began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "What I said earlier, about you being better than my world, I meant it. But I hope you might consider letting me try to be worthy of yours." The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and the promise of something neither had dared to hope for months ago. Before Zara could answer, Kieran's phone buzzed with an urgent text. His expression darkened as he read it. "What is it?" Zara asked. "Evangeline," he said grimly. "She's calling a press conference in 1 hour. She's going to try to spin this as a vindictive attack by a jealous ex-lover." Zara's jaw tightened with resolve. "Then I guess we'd better be ready with the truth." As they prepared for the final battle in this corporate war, both of them knew that everything, their careers, their reputations, and their growing feelings for each other, hung in the balance. But for the first time since this nightmare began, they were fighting as equals, as partners, as something that might become much more. 6 months later, the Seattle Business Journal ran a very different headline. "Ashworth Technologies posts record profits as power couple transforms industry." Zara stood on the balcony of Kieran's penthouse apartment, watching the sun set over Elliott Bay in shades of gold and crimson that reminded her of that transformative day in Malibu. The city sparkled below like scattered diamonds, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt completely at peace with where she belonged. "Penny, for your thoughts," Kieran's voice came from behind her, warm with the intimacy that had grown between them over the past months. She turned to find him approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, his business attire replaced by jeans and a cashmere sweater that made his grey eyes look like storm clouds shot through with silver. The transformation from arrogant CEO to the man she had fallen in love with still took her breath away sometimes. "Just thinking about how much has changed," she said, accepting the champagne and settling into his arms as he wrapped them around her from behind. The changes had been extraordinary. Evangeline's press conference had backfired spectacularly when federal agents arrived mid-statement to arrest her for securities fraud and industrial espionage. Cross Enterprises had collapsed within weeks, its stock price plummeting as investors fled the scandal. Evangeline herself was facing 10 years in federal prison, her empire of privilege crumbling like a house of cards. But the real transformation had been in Kieran and Zara themselves. "I got the Morrison Industries proposal back," Kieran murmured against her ear, his breath sending pleasant shivers down her spine. "They want you to lead their entire digital transformation project. It would mean 6 months in Portland, building your own team, essentially running your own division." Zara tensed slightly in his arms. "That's an incredible opportunity." "It is," he agreed, and she could hear the careful neutrality in his voice. "The kind of opportunity you've earned 10 times over." She turned in his arms to face him, studying his expression. Over the months, she had learned to read the subtle signs of his emotions, the slight tightening around his eyes when he was worried, the way his jaw set when he was fighting internal battles. "But," she prompted gently. Kieran's smile was rueful. "But I'm selfish enough to hope you might consider a different opportunity first." Before she could ask what he meant, he was pulling back, reaching into his pocket with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. Zara's heart stopped as he dropped to one knee on the balcony, the Seattle skyline glittering behind him like a fairy tale backdrop. The ring box in his hands was midnight blue velvet, and when he opened it, the diamond inside caught the last rays of sunlight and threw rainbows across the darkening sky. "Zara Belmont," Kieran began, his voice thick with emotion. "6 months ago, I was the most arrogant, blind, cruel man you could imagine. I tried to make you small because I was terrified of how magnificent you are. I dismissed your brilliance, ignored your worth, and nearly lost the most extraordinary woman I've ever known." Tears were streaming down Zara's face now, but she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this man who had become everything she never knew she needed. "You saved me," he continued, his grey eyes shining with unshed tears of his own, "not just professionally, but personally. You showed me what real strength looks like, what genuine excellence means, what it feels like to love someone not for what they can give you, but for who they are in their soul." He took a shaking breath, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more power than any corporate presentation he had ever given. "I know I don't deserve you. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be completely forgiven. But if you'll have me, if you'll trust me with your heart, I swear I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving that I can be the man you deserve, the man who sees your brilliance, celebrates your strength, and loves every magnificent inch of who you are." Zara was sobbing now, her hands pressed to her mouth as 18 months of pain and growth and unexpected love crashed over her like waves. "Marry me, Zara," Kieran said, his voice breaking with vulnerability. "To be my partner in everything. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved, forever." For a moment that stretched into eternity. She couldn't speak. She could only see the man kneeling before her, not the arrogant CEO who had once mocked her appearance, but the vulnerable, transformed soul who had fought battles for her, defended her honor, and somehow found the courage to change everything about himself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Kieran. Yes to everything." The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her, which, she suspected, it had been. As Kieran rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion and tenderness that had been building between them for months, Zara felt the last pieces of her carefully guarded heart click into place. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard and laughing through their tears, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. "So about that Morrison Industries offer," he said with a grin that was pure mischief. "What about it?" Zara asked, though she suspected she knew where this was going. How would you feel about being CEO of your own company instead? Belmont Consulting has a nice ring to it, don't you think? And I know this investor who might be interested in backing your first major venture. Zara stared at him in amazement. You want to fund my own consulting firm? I want to give you the world, Kieran said simply. But since I can't wrap that up with a bow, I figured I'd start with helping you build your own empire. As the Seattle night settled around them, filled with the promise of a future neither had dared to dream 6 months ago, Zara thought about the journey that had brought them here. From the beach in Malibu where everything changed, through corporate battles and personal revelations, to this moment of perfect understanding. She had started as his assistant, convinced she would never be more than adequate in his eyes. But she was ending as his equal, his partner, his future wife, and more importantly, as a woman who finally knew her own worth. "I love you, Kieran Ashworth," she said, the words carrying all the weight of forgiveness, hope, and infinite possibility. "I love you too, Zara Belmont," he replied, spinning her around on the balcony as the city lights twinkled below them like stars fallen to earth, forever and always. In the distance, a ferry horn sounded across Elliott Bay, carrying couples and families toward their own dreams and destinations. But Zara and Kieran had already arrived at theirs, not in a place, but in each other's arms, where two wounded souls had found healing, two brilliant minds had found their match, and two hearts had discovered that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the smallest recognition that everyone deserves to be seen for who they truly are. The arrogant millionaire CEO had learned to see beyond appearances, and the extraordinary woman he had once dismissed had taught him that true power comes not from making others small, but from lifting them up until they shine. Together, they would build something magnificent. The end. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you based solely on your appearance or position? How did it feel to discover your true worth and show the world who you really are? Do you believe people like Kieran can truly change? Or should Zara have moved on from the very beginning? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.